I don't think Encanto needs much introduction. It was released in November 2021 and quickly became one of the most loved Disney movies of all time. It was so good that it was nominated for 3 Oscars and won 1. It has been praised for being culturally inclusive and has sparked debates and conversations online about the impact of generational trauma. Now, that's not something that you see in an animated movie often. I know that many of us have seen Encanto at least half a dozen times because it's hard to get enough of it. But even at that, there are just so many hidden references that were expertly woven into the scenes that it's almost impossible to catch all of it. Yeah, this may be hard to believe, but I promise that the references really are there if you're looking hard enough. Don't believe me? Then let's take a look at some of the references that I'm willing to bet you missed. Okay, let's start off with one that's pretty easy to catch. Surface Pressure is Luisa's solo song, and it is one of the most underrated songs in Encanto. It is arguably the best song in the movie, and it is constantly overshadowed by We Don't Talk About Bruno and the Family Madrigal. Now, the song is catchy and relatable to hear Luisa sing of pressures like a drip, drip, drip that will never stop. But there are some references in the song that you might have missed. One of those references is the famous ship Titanic. Before we get into the song reference itself, it's pretty interesting to notice a similarity between Luisa and the Titanic. The Titanic was believed to be a very strong ship that couldn't be sunk, when Luisa was built to be a super strong person that had no worries or didn't feel pain. Well, both the Titanic and Luisa turned out to have weaknesses.
But then when I went to throw the donkeys in the barn, they were...
Even though everyone else had no idea. Also, in the song she sings, the ship doesn't swerve. Has it heard how big the iceberg is? And this is a clear reference to the Titanic, which sank in 1912 after hitting a huge iceberg and sinking into the North Atlantic Ocean. Yeah, some people might argue that the Titanic is not the only ship to have crashed into an iceberg and sunk. But while Luisa is singing in this video, we see 3 donkeys behind her playing violins as the ship sank. According to the survivors of the Titanic, the ship's music crew kept playing even as the ship sank. These 2 references made it more than clear that Luisa was referencing the Titanic. And speaking of Luisa, this one is also very easy and pretty much impossible to miss. The Titanic wasn't the only reference that Luisa made in Surface Pressure, because she also made a reference to Hercules and his fight against the Hound of Hades, and the line where she sings, "Was Hercules ever like, yo, I don't want to fight Cerberus?" It's pretty interesting to see how well Luisa knows her Greek mythology. The part of the song where she had the globe in her hands is also a reference to the Greek god who is said to hold up the heavens. Now let's talk about some of the references that is a little harder to catch, like the Doctor Who reference that was expertly hidden in one of the scenes. I know it might be a little bit hard to believe that there is a reference to Doctor Who and Encanto because both movies have very little in common. Hard as it is to believe, the reference is right there in the scene where Antonio gets his powers for the very first time. It is actually very easy to miss a reference because there was a lot going on in the scene, like Mirabel's sadness, the excitement that the rest of the family felt, Antonio's nervousness, and especially the fact that Castia started to fall apart at that very moment. But when Antonio opened the door to his new room, we see that it is a complete jungle that even has its own ecosystem with waterfalls, animals, and all of that stuff. It's pretty hard to imagine that a huge jungle can fit inside the Castia, which doesn't look as it's that big. That is why it's understandable when someone says it's bigger on the inside. Fans of Doctor Who will recognize this line because it's pretty much the same way he describes the TARDIS, which is the time machine and spacecraft that appears in the show. When he introduces the TARDIS, he said it's bigger on the inside than on the outside, and this is pretty much what the child in Encanto said. I think that was a pretty smart way to weave in some classic shows into Encanto. Frozen's another movie that has a lot of fans because it's also about family and a little bit about trauma. It is also making sense that it would include a Frozen reference in Encanto, and this reference comes in a line that was sung by none other than Bruno himself. At the end of Encanto, when the family sang the song All of You, Bruno apologizes to Peppa for ruining her wedding, and he encourages her to embrace her powers, saying, "Let it in, let it out. Let it rain, let it snow, let it go." Fans of Frozen will realize how this line sounds very similar to Elsa's popular song in Frozen, especially since Bruno's Let It Go line sounds very similar to Elsa's. Mickey Mouse is one of the most recognizable shapes in the world, and it is also the mascot of the Disney animations. This is why most, if not all, Disney movies have hidden Mickey Mouse shapes in some scenes, and you'll only catch them if you're paying rapt attention. Encanto has one or two Mickey Mouse, is it Mickey Mice, hidden in some of the frames. One can be seen in a scene where Mirabelle is singing Waiting on a Miracle. In a frame where she dances past her parents, you can see the glittery lights in the shape of a Mickey. Also in a scene where Mirabelle talks to Isabella and Isabella gets mad and kicks her out. One of the cacti that she mistakenly created is in the shape of a Mickey. Both of these Mickeys are there for only a fraction of a second, so you'll miss them if you blink, but trust me, they're there. There are many references hidden in Antonio's gift-giving scene that I'm pretty sure are some that I even missed. But one that I definitely didn't miss was a slight nod to Rapunzel in Tangled. I'm pretty sure we've all seen Tangled, or at least the story of the girl named Rapunzel who has lost her hair. In the scene, we can see Isabelle swinging down on a vine, just like how Rapunzel would have swung down on her own hair.
Mariano's nose looks like a smashed papa.
Pretty impressive how sneaky Encanto writers and animators are, isn't it? Just like Antonio's gift-giving scene has a lot of hidden references, it appears as though Surface Pressure has more than its own share of references.
I'm totally not nervous.
In the song, we see Louisa and Mirabelle standing in front of a line of doors that soon come torpedoing down on Mirabelle and Louisa. If you've seen Monsters, Inc., then you'll recognize that this is also a hidden reference because the doors in Surface Pressure almost look the same as the doors that are being carried around on a conveyor belt in Monsters, Inc. If there's one thing that the writers of Encanto did, it's to include references from some of the best, most loved Disney movies in Encanto. This is a small action that honestly makes a good movie even better. In addition to references to movies like Frozen and Rapunzel, Encanto also contains a reference to Coco. You know, the 2017 Disney movie about a young boy who likes to sing even though singing is banned in his family? Yep. Again, like many of the other references in Encanto, this one is so brief that you'll miss it if you're not paying attention. In the scene where villagers arrive at Castia for Antonio's gift-giving ceremony, we see Camilo greeting every new arriver and shape-shifting into every single person that he greets. One of the visitors look exactly like Mama Coco from Coco, and they even have the same clothes and hairstyle. A coincidence? I don't think so. The writers and animators did an excellent job on this movie, and I'm pretty sure I caught all of their references. So tell me guys, which of these references did you already know, and which one surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like this video if you watched it, subscribe if you haven't done so already, and remember to turn on notifications for future uploads.